Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Here we are with part 2. So what am I doing now with this Airscale Instrument Panel Upgrade? As we know from before, we need these parts here need to be green, and then this rear panel here, this goes behind the instrument panel, this is kind of flat black in images I can see, and the actual instrument panel itself tends to have a kind of satin effect to it. Now the black with the Photo-etch has kind of given a satin effect, but I'm going to go over it anyway with some satin varnish, some Tamiya, as usual, well prepared. I've got X35 and I've got F6F-5. So I'm going to use X35 on the actual dial surround parts here and here, and I'm actually going to use the XF86 on this panel here. So I'll get some more masking done so I can do these down there, and then I'll come back when I've done them. Right, there we go. So I've painted those now. We can see this is the gloss, this is the satin on these panels here, and then we've got the matte on there, and that's all the Tamiya varnishes. So they need to be left to dry now for a while. Just looking in the instructions, what Peter at Airscale suggests you do, he says add the decal one to the front, checking alignment of instruments to the holes with the panel from part 3. So what he suggested is you put the decal on this panel here, and then you put that panel over the top and just check the alignment. Now what I've found is his decals are so good compared to the Photo-etch. What I do is this: I take the decal, put it behind the instrument panel so that all the gauges are perfectly aligned, and then I look around the edges and I see that the decal is actually perfectly the same size as the instrument panel itself. Then if I do the same on here, I can see that the decal is the same size as this actual panel, or maybe just slightly a touch larger. Okay, so what I can do then is put that on there, and as long as I get the edges all the way around correct, then I know that I'm right. And the other thing I've just noticed, we've got these two holes again, which are there. Yep, they go through. So if we actually line those light dots up with those holes, then we can see that we actually have got it in exactly the right position. So that's a 0.9 hole, that's a 0.75 hole. These holes here I'm referring to, so we could actually punch the paper or draw the paper or whatever, get those lined up absolutely perfect. So and the same applies on here. If you look at the way these go, you'll see that when the gauges are perfectly lined up, then everything there is perfect. And it doesn't need to be absolutely 100% spot on, because remember, every time you look at this, you're going to be looking on that angle. So it's always going to look slightly out because the gauge is actually behind the panel, as it would be in real life. So and then again on this one we got the same effect here, where we can put it on there and line up the gauges on there, you see. So what I basically do, I sound like the most experienced guy in the world here. This is my second Airscale set that I've used, and basically what I do is get the outside of the decal to line up on that part, and then I know that I'm good to go. So I'm going to let this all dry now, and then I'm going to come back and put these decals on here, and then we can start looking at putting it all together. Right then, so this all dry now. I've put a drop of clear gloss in that little instrument there, because there's a decal number 21 goes in there, so that's what that is. It's not a drop of water or something, it's actually clear gloss. And it's made me think afterwards, because it's probably going to have some carrier film on it, I'm probably going to have to go over it with a matte varnish again anyway, and then put a drop of clear on it to make it look like a glass lens, but we'll see how it goes. So I've got these main parts of the instrument panels cut out here ready to go on, and we'll do the main one first. So we've got some tweezers here that will hold it, so I'm going to put it in some warm water upside down, just leave it there for a few seconds, and then just put it there. And I'm going to get a drop of microset, and just wet the surface of this part with it. A bit too much there actually, just clean that brush off. Try and wick some away. There we go. Get rid of that cotton bud, don't want to use that one again. So we've got some on there, and that should help the decal to stick down. That's not ready to go yet. So what I'm going to do is swap the sides so I can work from, there we go, it's ready to go now. I'd rather work from right to left than left to right because I'm right-handed. So just add some water. You need to make sure this surface is wet to ensure that the decal will actually slide around. From experience, if you put these down too dry, you will lose the ability to float them. So what I'm going to do now is just move this one around like so. Get it into position, and I'm going to use those holes that we talked about before as my alignment, and when I hold it up to the light I should see through those holes. Just going to dab it down a bit with the cotton bud. Okay, so I've set up this little light here. I've fused it down, or filtered it down with some masking tape. But just to show you what you're aiming for, if you look on the left hand side there by my thumb, you can see there's two tiny holes, light showing through. Lower left hand corner, two tiny hole there, and you've got the two bigger holes, and then you've got a tiny hole just there in the middle. So if you get all those to line up with the decal, then you know your decal's in the right place, and when you put this over, it's going to line up. And there we are, all done. So I've done 1, 2, 3 and 21, and you can see there they're all looking nice. Very lucky with this one. I put it down, and as soon as I put it down I thought, what are you doing? I realised that I'd only just put the clear on a few minutes previously, so basically that is now sat in wet clear varnish. I can't believe I managed to position it, and the positioning is quite precise because again that one has got a hole in the back. You can see the light coming through here where that decal is, and again on this one we got a tiny little hole round about, I don't know, 7 o'clock on that one. You can see the tiny little hole, and this one has no holes at all. So what I've done on that one is from behind just basically looked at it and got it even on the film from behind. So I'm happy with that, so I can leave those to go off now, and then I might seal them in, I don't know, but yeah, really chuffed. This set is going together a lot nicer than the Lancaster one did. I think it's probably just because I'm more experienced. I've just noticed I've got these two down here to do, so let me get those done. And there we go, they're all on now. Got these two on the bottom as well. This one here, 13 and 14, also notice this is part 13, so don't let that confuse you. Part 13, the second one, is called up here 13 and 14, and decal 30 can be used as an option for some aircraft seen with this instrument under the gun sight mount. And I've looked in here, and it looks like this aircraft has actually got it, and I think there's some mention of this being a night fighter sort of scheme. It does look as though this is like the standard instrument panel, which is what the kit is depicting, that the set here is depicting, but it does look as though in some pictures I've found that the night fighters have this sort of, I don't know if it's a pressed aluminium sheet over the instrument panel to stop the glare from the gauges, or what it is, I don't know. But basically if you look at some of the night fighter images, I can't find any now and you don't watch me going through a book, but if you look at some of the night fighter images, they seem to have this, it's either a cover or it's an aluminium block. It's probably just a cover, and it stops the glare going back to the pilot from the gauges, I guess, to stop him lighting up at night, I suppose, or to make it easier for him to see the actual gauges themselves. So yeah, you have to do some research and decide what you want to do. I don't think I'll be using it, but I've put the decal on there anyway, and then it's basically going to be a sheet of acetate and then that piece over the top. This one here, 15 and 16, this is the central ammo counter, which is here. Okay, so that's underneath the instrument panel there in the middle. That one there, you won't be able to use a piece of acetate because the actual gauge face is raised. So that what you have to do with that was gloss coat it first and then put the gauge on. If you gloss coat it afterwards, you end up with this sort of concave look. And in this scale, you know, 24 scale, that doesn't look so clever. So I'll leave that there for now and let them dry off and everything, and then we'll start putting it all together. As I say, today is Thursday, it's now about 4 o'clock. So I'll be getting my kit in the morning first thing and doing a review and then cracking on with it straight away. So what I'll probably do, I'm not even sure, I haven't seen the instructions, I'm not even sure if the first stage of assembly is actually the cockpit, but I'll probably do the cockpit first anyway. And what I'll probably do is use whatever the kit has got in it and show you basically how the kit goes together, and then remove it and fit all this, because I realise that a lot of people will be watching me build this model who aren't necessarily, you know, very experienced, and they're going to need a bit of guidance perhaps, although people like to have some guidance, don't they? People like to be shown stuff. So basically what we're looking at is this area here, the starboard sidewall. So it's called right hand console here. So it's saying carefully remove the larger switches from the console top kit part E18 and save for remounting later. This is E18, which is this panel here. So I'm going to remove these larger buttons on here. And the way I'm going to do that is with a razor saw. So what I'm going to do is get my saw out of its box here, and I've got the coarse side and the fine side. I'm going to use the fine side, and what I'm going to do is try and slice through this panel, because with the Airscale set you get the whole panel replaced. So if I can actually shave off this panel, then I'll get to the root of all those buttons. So it's going to take some doing, but the end result is worth it, believe me. I did this on my Lancaster Airscale build, and having these bits of plastic to glue on top of the Photo-etch really does make a difference. And it doesn't matter if we cut into this panel, guys, because we're going to be covering it all with a piece of Photo-etch. So I mean, I guess you could remake it out of plastic card if you wanted to. So it's starting to peel away. You can see it's a very thin slither of plastic coming up. And being careful not to push too hard and not to go too fast. You don't start melting things. Now that lever there, I need to try and save that lever as well if I can. So I'm going to have to change my angle, remove that peg there. We don't need that, so no doubt you want to fast forward now, don't blame you. Here we go, we're getting there now. You can see that basically what I'm taking off is just the absolute finest slither of plastic off of the top. We're doing the same now with this little handle at the back. So we're almost there. As you can see now, that's ready to come off, that one there. So we've got the little handle, can keep that to one side, and then here I can just keep on cutting. I think I'm going to change sides and go from this way, but I think I've basically got everything there I need. So if I do mess up now, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, the blade slipped out there, so I'm going to go back to cutting this way. There we go. I've got all of our buttons and knobs and everything on there ready for reuse. And then there's another knob back here which I'm going to try and get off. If I can get this off, that'll be amazing. 100% success rate. There we go, that's that one off as well. So there's that little knob on there. Okay, crazy I know, but that's the way it is. So I'm just going to sand this now. I need a hard stick, something fairly coarse. I can just sand this flat. And there we go. Right, so now it's saying what we need to do is add, sorry, drop that on the floor, sand all the details from the top of kit part E18, and then add decals 18 and 23 to kit part E18 using edges for alignment and reference to PE part 13, which replaces the kit detail. So this is part 13, and then this is going to go over the top, as I said, and you've got these little cutouts and stuff to line up. So you want those dials to line up in there perfectly. Now what I'm going to do, so I can add a bit of realism to it, I'm just going to do a little bit more than Peter's said here. What I'm going to do is cut here, just not too deep, just to make a groove, and then I'm going to file away or scrape away some plastic from this area so I can make it thinner, and that way I can put the decal on, then add a piece of acetate to the top, and then when you look at the instrument you'll have the glass over the top. So I just want to do that for a bit of extra realism, and I'll do the same here. Decal 23 is this one here, and that one's going to go over that instrument there. See that hole in the plastic, it's about there, so that's going to fit in there. So I'm going to do the same there so I can get a piece of acetate over them. So I'll basically do this, paint these gloss and let them go off, put the decals on, position the decals, then put the acetate on, then put the photo etch on, then I'll have to mask those dials and then paint it all. And also the other thing I'll do is go around the edge of the photo etch with Mr. Surfacer, because I want the panel to look like one, I don't want it to look like a piece of photo etch stuck on. Just had a thought, guys. I've painted the parts black now, and this is ready for decals, and this is ready for decals. Basically I may as well have glued this together before I painted it, because there's nothing to go under here. So if you're building this and you're doing it the Airscale set, then you may as well glue that together after you've done all the work on this, and then you can work on that seam around the edge there, and when you put the photo etch on you can work on that seam as well, and then you can put the decals here, and the reason I've painted that black is for that decal to go there, and yeah, it'll look superb. And just to prove I am clinically insane, here's my second set. There's the where's the first fret? Where's it gone? It was here, wasn't it? There it is. So yeah, there's this one, and there's how you start. So go back to the beginning of the Airscale videos and you'll see all of this from the beginning. Now right, so we're onto the point now of putting the decals on. Now, as it says in the instructions, I'm using this as the guide, and basically, if you remember, I've recessed these areas. I've put some gloss coat on them. You can see they've got sanding marks in them, but I really don't care. It won't matter once the acetate's over there. But basically, you use the photo-etch part to position the decal. Okay, so I've got this one here now wet and ready to go. So I'm going to put some microset on the actual panel there, and then the way Peter's designed this is that the edge of the decal will actually sit on the edge of the panel. Now this one here, the top edge sits on the top edge, so that's pretty neat. Now here you can see he's got the cutout there and everything. I've trimmed a little bit off the end just to make sure my decal doesn't rise over. I'm just going to use my stumpy thumbs and then position the decal roughly in place like that, and then I'm going to put the PE part over the top and then just lower it down over, and then I can look and see that actually as luck would have it, I've positioned it. I'm using the little slots in the plastic and everything to align the photo etch, and you can see that that is nigh on perfect. I think it just needs to be nudged up a touch. Yeah, it needs to be moved. And I don't know if you can pick that up there, I doubt you can, but the decal is just off of the edge, so I just need to just move it up to the edge. So what Peter's done here is made the decal the perfect size, so it needs to basically along this top edge match the edge of the plastic, and I think then it will be perfectly aligned. Now one thing I will say, and Peter won't thank me for this, these decals are not the toughest in the world. They go down beautifully and they pull down like nothing else I've ever seen, but they are fairly thin and you can't play with them too much. They tend to like to go down and bang, they're down, that's it. You can't spend all day moving them around, and they're certainly not like hobby boss decals that you can float around on water for hours. You can see this one's already started to wrinkle with the microset. I like to use microset because it does make them stick down better, and then I just go over the top with some microsol, just smooth it out. And that will be down in a minute like nothing else, and then I'm just going to have a quick final check. There we go. So there's the gauges in position. Now, if you remember in the last part what we did, we glued this on. I've now gone around the edge with Mr. Surfacer and sanded all that in so it's nice and smooth and neatly in there and everything. And I've also, you can see the green on the dials, I've masked them off, so that's ready for painting green. I was going to mask off these panels that are going to be painted black. I'm not going to bother now. I'm going to have to paint it green, give it a gloss coat, put the decals on and then put it in. This panel here, I don't know why I didn't fit it before I fitted the plastic part, but either way, wherever you are in your build, it still goes in. It's just a bit awkward, that's all. So this part here is going to need to go in, so we'll put that in there. That's going to be super glued in place. And then if we go back to the Airscale instructions, it says on here about we're getting ready now to fit our instrument panel to the kit instrument panel, and it says on here to remove sound kit part R4 to remove all face detail and give a flat mounting surface for PE part 8. The PE part 8 is the big one here in the middle, so we're getting ready to put that on. This is R3, this is R4. Now the kit parts, the difference is in, I think we've shown you this before, this one is flat faced, so you use the kit decals which are supplied with the kit, which is nice, and this one has all the moulded on detail, so you can actually paint it if you want to. Now I don't know why they've made this in clear. I guess you could paint this black from behind and then paint the detail on the front. I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know why they made this in clear. It's a bit like the old trumpeter kits when they used to have clear instrument panels and there was no real purpose for it, because you put a film behind and there were holes in the instruments anyway, So it wasn't for instrument glass. It's a bit strange. Anyway, what we've got to do here is telling us to sand all the detail off. The other difference I've noticed with these two, this is R3, this is R4. This one's got the table on the bottom. There's a map table that goes underneath here that slides in and out. The kit actually has the table. I'll show you in the instructions here. Where are we? There we go. We have the table there, which is part E42, and there's also a decal to go on it of a map. So you can use that if you want to. So we're going to use this one, R4, which is the one with without any detail on it, and it's got to be sanded flat to remove the detail so we can stick the PE on. Now basically, if you look at the surrounding panel, it's flat, so all I've got to do is put this on a pretty coarse stick and just make sure I keep it flat. You don't want to start rubbing and taking all this off here. You notice there's quite a big lump in the centre, and I'll tell you what, this is quite a soft plastic. I will get away with cutting that off rather than sanding it all the way. So I've cut that big lump off the middle. Now we can just gently sand, and don't go mad with this. Don't start getting in there and going crazy sanding away too fast, because you'll start to get things hot. You'll clog your sanding stick up. That's that done then. So and I've sanded this one down as well, again using the lump of blue tack. So that's that part there, which is, what is that number of that part? It is where is it going on? There it is there, R2. So it's that little part there, and if you're doing the Airscale Instrument Panel, you've got parts 4 and 5, I believe, that go on there. Yes, you can see them, 4 and 5, and I've already got the decals on there. If you want to see about putting the decals on, if you go back to watch the Airscale videos, you'll see it on there if you're watching this now as part of the build. And if you didn't know, what I'm doing is taking pieces of this out of this build and actually putting them together to make an Airscale, you know, how I do the Airscale cockpit. So it's just the Airscale related bits, so it won't include any painting or anything like that. So then, so now we've done that, so we need to fit that part 8 onto there. So I'm going to get the Photo-etch fret out, and if you remember, I did a review on these little cheap nail cutters you can get on eBay, and someone suggested they're really good for Photo-etch, and sure enough, they are. They're brilliant for Photo-etch. I generally cut on a flat board, I must be honest, but I must be honest, these things, you can use them like a pair of scissors and cut out your Photo-etch parts all day long, just like that. Okay, and then we'll have to go around the edge with a sanding stick or a file and just remove the little nibs. They might be easier to see from behind. I didn't realise I painted the back as well. Don't recall doing that, but hey, never mind. And all this paint's going to get touched up in the end anyway, or you can just leave it as is, because sometimes it can look quite accurate with chipping and damaging and stuff. That's one of the good things about having the nickel silver rather than the brass, because when it chips it leaves a silver colour behind rather than the gold brass, which is a good thing. And there we go, that's them all gone. There we are, and then that should fit on there in normal Airscale style perfectly, like that. Absolutely gorgeous, look at that, perfect fit. Now I'm guessing that there is a lightning hole. There's nothing else going in there, so that's going to have to be drilled out, and I'll probably do that afterwards, because if I do it now it's likely to just shatter the plastic part. So I'm going to get this glued on, and I expect you want to see how I do this. So I think what I'll do, I think I'll use the Gorilla Glue, this Gorilla Wood Glue. I'll use this again, and then I may go around the edge afterwards with some thin CA, and I'll show you how I do that. So I'm just going to put some on here, put a few blobs in certain areas, and then I can just squeeze it all out. It's fairly fast drying this, it's very good, and it also dries very hard, and it dries crystal clear, so that's a good thing. So we could just put that on there and then position it all around. I'm just squeezing the edges to try and get it all sat equally, and all I don't want to do is get any finger marks over that decal. There's a little decal you can see there. Where is it? There we go. Little decal you can see there. So I don't want to get any glue on that. Just give that a squeeze. I'm just going to get a cotton bud, just wet it and remove the glue that's coming through there, because that will affect the fit of the parts that go on top. Okay, and then I'm going to remove those smudges of glue I got on there. Right. Well, I've just realised there's something I haven't told you about the other part, the starboard sidewall. So I'm just going to get this properly wet. Properly wet now. I just want to make sure I've got no remnants of glue on there, because as I say, once it dries, it's not like PVA, it doesn't just roll off, it dries quite hard. There we go. That can just sit there for 10 minutes to dry, and then we can get back on it. The other thing I forgot to say about this part here, if you look here, there's these tiny little holes. If you can see them, if the camera will pick up on them, there's tiny little holes in the panel, and that's for switch gear. So what you do is, as I've done here, you drill through these tiny little holes. Okay, drill them through. These are I think I drilled these 0.4, and then those above are 0.5. And then you put pieces of wire in there, cut it off, and able to pick little toggle switches, and really does bring your cockpit to life. I'll show you that though, you will see that. In fact, yeah, having said that, I talked about this being maybe being the last part. It definitely won't be. This is probably going to be a part 8, 8C, maybe even an 8D, because all that takes quite a while, and I'm sure you want to see it all. What I'll do, as I said before, when I get tired of Photo-etch, I'll just move along, go back on the engine or something, do something else. I don't carry on modelling. I don't model or build something I don't want to do at that time. If I don't feel like doing it, I don't do it. Let's just get something to get in there. Just want to get in there and just remove that glue from there. There we go. It doesn't matter, I'm going to be drilling those through anyway. There's another couple of holes there, so that'll all be drilled through. And if you remember, when I actually did the stack up with, where's the Photo-etch gone? Where did the Photo-etch go? It has disappeared. There it is. We did the stack up with this, where I glued, that was part 2. When I glued part 2 to part 1, I used those 2 drills. I'll do the same again to get all this sandwiched up, to get that onto there and to get that onto the front. Put the 2 drills through, and then you can just sandwich it all together. You know it's all going to line up, and then we've got these tiny little holes to drill in through there as well. So there we go, that's that glued on. Okay, moving on to step 7 here in the instructions. What it's telling me here is for the right hand triangle instrument panel, this one, add decal 2 to part 4, which I've done. Decal 2 is on part 4, and align with part 5. Align the 2 straight edges with kit part R2, and taking care to line up the tab at the bottom of the part. The PE part is correctly shaped and will overhang the kit part slightly on the curved edges. So the 2 straight edges are this one and this one. So what I'm going to do here is line this up like so. Now what it's actually saying is line the 2 straight edges. Do they mean that edge and that edge, or that edge and that edge? It's obviously the bottom. Yeah, I'm guessing, looking at this, it looks like you're going to line up this edge and this edge. You can't have it sticking out towards the right anymore because it won't go in. So you can't go wrong. If you go it this way, looking at this picture here, it looks like it's overhanging. Let's just have a look when it's fitted into that slot. Yeah, so what you're doing, I can guarantee you, if you're using this as an instructional thing, you're going to use this edge and this edge to line this part up. And I've just noticed this black paint is rubbing off the back very easily, so what I'm going to do is remove it with a stick. I think a lot of it may just be overspray, because the way that's coming off of there, yeah, it's just overspray. So what we'll do is we'll get some glue on here. Where's my little cocktail stick on? There it is. So we'll get some glue on here, just spread it around, and then we can put this on and then float it about. Give it a squeeze. And there we go. I just want to get those edges lined up. Right, so moving along here, I've removed these panels from the fret. They're sort of kind of, you can see a little bit chipped and stuff, which you could say looks a bit realistic. I'm going to give them a quick coat of X18 semi-gloss black, just to sort of cover up all the edges and everything. I'm going to have to go over the edges again afterwards, after everything's glued, but I just want to make sure I don't have any chipping really close to the dials. That's going to be really difficult to pick up on later. If after I do this I get another couple of chips, then fine, but I just want to try and make it look as nice as possible, and then I can chip it up myself where I want the chips rather than just where they happen to be. So I'll just give this another little quick light coat of paint, and then we can get on and start looking at putting it all together. And there we are. Look, we can see they've got a nice sort of semi-matte sheen to them now, semi-gloss sheen should I say. So let those go hard. I may give them a quick coat of clear, semi-gloss clear, just to protect it, but we'll see. As long as I don't handle it too much, I should be fine. It's just that when it all gets chipped, I'd rather have it looking new and then knock it back myself rather than have it chipped because it's been used. And while I had the black paint in the airbrush, I just did a bit of pre-shading in the cockpit just to add some sort of depth to it really. So what I'm going to look at now is getting this panel here glued in, because I'm going to have to do my little Vista Surfacer thing again, I think. So we shall see. So this panel here is curled up. I'm just going to try and get it sort of a little bit flatter. Unfortunately, curling up is part of the etching process. If there's any surface tension in the material, obviously if you remove, if this is a sheet of material here that's got equal surface tension on each side, if I remove this side, it's going to pull that way because I've removed the tension from here, so this side will pull it like that. So that's basically what happens, and unfortunately it's pretty much unavoidable, I believe. So this, if you've already glued this side panel in like I have, then putting this in is a little bit awkward. It has to go underneath this lever here, and it also has to go under that cable coming down from that box there, and it also has to go behind this throttle quadrant part, so it kind of has to hook in there and then push the back down first, and then it will kind of go in. It's a bit awkward, so hook it under there, into the back, and then it will go in. Yeah, my advice, if you haven't built this yet, is to put this in before you glue the part in. Sorry, I'm telling you the wrong way. You hook it in here underneath this lever here. So hook this end in, then tip it up towards you, hook it down behind the throttle quadrant, and then push it down. That's it. That's how it goes. And then you need to nudge it back to make sure it's equal about around this part here. So that's all in place there. And what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to use super glue, and I'm going to get some of the thin. Got my thin super glue here. Somebody asked me what super glue I use. I could have sworn I had Vital Bond, which is what this one here is. This is Vital Bond. This one's old and gone off. So yeah, this is Expo, and this is the thin. You can see it's very, very thin and watery. Got my trusty old Pringles lid and my glue looper. So what I'm going to do here is just use this glue looper, and I'm going to put a spot of glue in the middle first, under here. And this stuff is, as I say, it's getting on a bit, so it takes a little bit longer to dry, which is we could use to our advantage. If this was brand new, that would have gone off. Now it'd be gone, it'd be done in second, in 1 second sort of thing. But this sort of gives you 10 seconds to work with it, and I could just make sure it's in the middle, and there we go, that's in like that. Then I'm going to put some glue under, where's my looper? Put some glue under this end here, just like so, push that down, and then I can let some wick in from the sides. Like so, and then just put some underneath in here, and then give that a little push down. And now what you can do, because I've got this glue looper and it's so thin, I can now wick the glue off of here into the join, like so, and the capillary action will pull it in, just like your extra thin goes into your plastic parts. Do the same here, just using the edge, and then get a cotton bud and just rub over the end, don't roll it, rub it, and that will just remove any excess glue that's left on there. And I want to make sure that that middle piece has gone down nicely, so I'm just going to get some glue on the edge of there and let that wick in, and then just give it a push down. In fact, I'll push it down with a cotton bud, just wipe the excess. Just a quick tip, guys, I put this panel in, as you've just seen, after I'd glued this plastic part into the sidewall of the fuselage. It really does need to go on beforehand. I think I've actually got, I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick this up, but I've actually got a step here, and it should be further back on the panel, but I can't get it in now because I've glued it into the side of the fuselage. So what I'd recommend, glue that panel onto this plastic panel first, and then you won't have the same problems I've got. I'm not really going to do too much about it, because when it's in there and it's sort of over on this angle, no one's really going to see much of it anyway. It's just, the nice part about it is it has all this raised detail, whereas the plastic part is just flat, and also it covers up a seam line where this part glues on here. So it's a nice to have, but just make sure you glue it on before you glue that panel in. So what I've done, because I need to do this through a glass, I've done this off camera. But what I do, basically I've put the front of the instrument panel onto the backing, and I'm just going around getting some super glue and just dabbing it on, holding it together, dab it on, hold it together, dab it on, and then once it's all glued, I go all the way around the edge with some super glue, let it go hard, and it seals the edge in. And then what you can do is sand it, staying on along the line of the photo etch, and you can just sand it so you get everything nice and flush. Okay, and then when you actually come and touch it up with some paint, what you will see is you get a panel that looks like a panel rather than a lamination of Photo-etch and acetate. So that's all you do, is just rub him around the edge. Now you don't need to watch me do this, so I'm going to come off camera, do this in my optimizer or through my magnifier, and then I'll come back and we'll get some painting done. Okay, so I've gone around the edge of those now with glue, rubbed them down, and then gone around the edge with glue again just to sort of smooth it all out. And now I've put some Vallejo seal liquid mask into the apertures where the gauges are, because I'm going to have to paint them again, because as you can see we've got some tatty edges, and I also got some super glue over the bottom there as well. So I want to just sort of basically spray them in again with a semi-gloss and get the sort of semi-gloss finish against this flat background. It just adds a bit more interest to the cockpit. So while they're drying, I've also assembled these. These are parts 15 and 16, and they are the center ammo counter for this part. Now, in the kit set, in the Airscale set, it said this part is optional, reflects the layout seen in most F6Fs where heating and gun controls are placed. And I think basically what it is the F6F-5 had rockets, and this is the rocket control panel here. The actual Photo-etch part is here, and you can see the difference there. There is no rocket control panel. So basically I've decided on this one I'm not going to use that. I'm going to stay with the plastic because this one is loaded out as having rockets. Now my FAA one isn't having rockets. Whether that's correct or not I don't know, but it's not having rockets, so I'll probably use that on that one. If somebody comes on here and categorically tells me that the FAA one should have rockets, I'll put them on there, but I'm not sure if it would have had the American rockets. Even if it did, it probably would have had the English ones. So now I'm going to start looking at decals. Now we've got some choices here. Airfix give us a massive decal sheet, and all across the top you can see there's all gauges and stencils and all sorts of stuff, and a lot of this is for the cockpit. So when you actually look at the instructions here on the back page of the booklet, basically they've got all these instructions laid out now, all the decals laid out telling you where they all should go. Now all of this is the cockpit other than there, which is the gun bay doors. So what I've done, I've gone through and looked at what is in the Airfix decal sheet and what is in the Airscale decal sheet. Now I've decided I want to use the Airscale decals because I like them. They're very thin, they go down nicely, and they're slightly different. They're slightly less kind of, if I can show you. You see these here are sort of a bit of a faded red, and these are a bit more in your face, and the writing is a bit more defined, if you know what I mean. So I've decided I'm going to use these where I can. So what I've done, I've gone round and basically crossed off where I'm not going to use the Airfix decals. Now obviously for the rocket control panel here I need 35 and 36, which are here, which you can't even see because they're white. And then you've also got these two here on the back of the seat mount, so obviously they need to go on there as well. They're not in the actual Airscale decal set at all. So I've basically gone around and ticked. Now these two here, they go on the actual ridge there on the rail on the side of the cockpit. Now I'm not going to put those on yet in case I decide to go in here and do any filler work and touch up and that, so I won't put those on yet. I'll leave those till the end. And obviously I'm not doing this seat base at the moment. Now I've just noticed here we've got some decals there that go on, and yeah, the Airscale set doesn't have that one, number 4, so I'm going to add that one. It also doesn't have number 3 by the look of it. Yeah, so number 4 and number 3, I'm going to tick those off because we're going to use those. But all the rest are just gauges, which obviously we've already got on the instrument panel itself. But yeah, we've got to put the instrument panel onto this backing here, which is what's shown there. Now this here is represented with a decal. Now with a Photo-etch plate, so that's, we're not going to be putting anything on there. But here there's no decal in the Airscale set for that, so that decal number 4 is going to basically go onto there, which is basically those two dials upside down. That's that. Now let's have a look at these, back to the Airscale decals. I'm going to cut that number off. I always cut the numbers off on my decals because they tend to they don't have any backing on them, they tend to just float off, and if they end up underneath one or sticking out the side or something, they're a proper pain. So they're going to go on here. I'm going to use them on the Airfix part. I'm not going to use the Airfix decals. If they don't fit, I'll have to put them on there, but I'm sure they will, because the one thing about the Airscale decals, they pull down over contours and stuff. Absolutely beautiful. No hobby boss here. So that's gone like that. They're not ready to go yet. Okay, nearly there. So I'm just going to put some more set on here. And slide that. Oh dear, I've grabbed that one. Slide that. Oh, come on. Yeah, it's really too warm to be doing this, guys. The micro set is drying out before I can get anything on there. So that's just going to sit like that. And what I'm going to do is let the set and sole do its thing and pull it down, because it's got some edges to go over and stuff. So I'll put a drop more set on the top of that one. And I'll put some more on this side. Notice I'm putting too much on because it just dries out straight away. And in good old fashion, it's decided it wants to stick to my finger rather than the model. There we go. You may ask why I'm leaving this on the sprue. It's purely for painting. Just a couple of corrections, guys. Well, one correction. I actually said that this decal here, number 4, wasn't included in the Airscale set. It is. It's there. It's number 8, and it's shown there. Okay, so I thought it was. I was looking for it up here, but it wasn't there. So it's there. So we have got that one. The other thing I found is the best way to use these decals. I've never done this before, but I thought I'd give it a go. If you actually take them, I'm just trying to see which way this one goes up. It's going to go that way. So basically, if you just take them and move them off the sheet and grab them with a pair of tweezers, you can then place it over the model, position it where you want it, and let it go. Just like that, which is a lot easier than messing around, sliding it around on your finger, because, as I say, once it goes down, it's down, and that's the trouble. When you slide it on, you're kind of pushing it on with your finger. So I think I've just found the trick to make these work. Now I'm going to have to go off camera and position this because I want it perfect, and that's okay, it's good enough. You remember, a lot of this stuff, as good as it looks, like this one here, when you actually look down in the cockpit, you're not really going to see it because you can't see in there. But if it wasn't there, it would just be a bare plain area, and then we'd all moan about it. So I'm not sure if they supply this one in the kit. Yeah, the thing is, what they do in the kit, with the kit decals, like this has got the black background. With the kit decals, they expect you to paint the black and then put the decal on. Whereas with this one, you just put it on the green. It's job done. Once this is matte coated, it looks all like one anyway. It looks fantastic. And as I said, these decals go down like no other. I mean, if you look at this one, I've done this one on the fuse board. And just look how that's gone down. You know, it's got micro set and micro sole on it. It's just unbelievable how well these things go. When that's dry, you won't believe your eyes how well that pulls down. And I've also got this one here now, which is this is number 20, and this one is going to go above where I've just put that other one. So I'm going to put some microset on there, and then just grab this one in the tweezers and just place it in there, and then you can move it around because it hasn't had anything pushing it down. And there we go, that's down. Quick dab with the cotton bud. Oops, drop the cotton bud. Right, back to correcting myself again. I said that these two decals aren't included in the set. Well, actually they are, and they're decals number 28 and 27. The Airfix ones are 20 and 21, and with this one you've got two of the 28s, which are the two of the red squares, and then the 27 is like a data plaque, and they go along these rails here. The plaque goes just forward of the red square on the right side, on the left side, port side, as you can see here. Decal number 21 on the Airfix kit. So, yeah, the parts are in there. So, and I thought they weren't. Unfortunately, one part that is missing in this set is there's a decal on here, which says cabin or something, I think, and it's a red decal, and it's for the moving of the canopy fore and aft. So what did I do? I went to my decals box and I got out the Airscale cockpit placards from World War II 24 scale and selected, you can see here's the decal sheet here, and I haven't used them before, and down here we've got some red squares and stuff with some warnings, emergency exits, and just some generic, you know, blobs and bits and pieces. So that was really handy for that, and there it is there. So I'm now going to get that and put it on my... Okay, we're back. This is the next day now. This is actually Sunday, and you can see what I've done here, if I can get it to focus, is the knobs that I cut off originally, if you remember. I've now glued them back on with a drop of Tamiya clear varnish, and hopefully that'll just dry down and hold them in place, and then I can get some paint on them. And then we'll get the little toggle switches in, made out of wire. I'm not quite sure what diameter I'm going to use yet. I'll have a look. And then it's going to be a coat of varnish and some matte coating, I think, and some washing. Right, so moving on now. Done some little toggle switches on here, as you can see, with some 0.3 wire. You can see them on there. So they're looking lovely. Still waiting for that to go off so I can give it another gloss coat. I think I'll put the instrument panel on now, and the way I'm going to do that, you have these two small get that off. You have these two small divots in there, and you have two small raised areas on the back of the actual panel itself, and they actually locate. Now, if you want to use super glue as I do, then obviously your time to position is going to be very restricted. So what I've done is I've put a couple of drills in the instrument panel, and then these will slide over, okay, and they stay there like that, and that allows me to get some super glue, put it in the back area here, in those two divots in there, and then I can just slide the instrument panel down, give it a nudge, and there it is, it's there. Job done. And you can see there the difference in the satin and the matte black. If you look there, you can see it's a slightly different shade. It just adds a bit of interest, and that's what it is. It's like I keep saying, it's the use the model as the canvas and just put some artistic talent into it, and you know, sometimes perhaps stretch the accuracy a little bit, but yeah, it's good fun. It's just, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's having some fun. Right, so now to finish up with all these Airscale bits and pieces, I've actually now fitted the little side part here, which I think is parts 6 and 7. I'm sure it's parts 6 and 7. Yes, fitted that onto here, bent over, if you remember, 15 degrees, and then I've put some glue in behind there just to make sure it stays in place. Now we've got this little lever. I'm not sure exactly what the lever does. It's probably something to do with undercarriage or something like that. And if you look at this, I don't know if I can get it to focus in on the camera, it's basically a little lever, and you have to bend those little two tabs. But I found something in my reference material that what it is actually on the end of it, it's quite a large, it's a square block. Well, it's a square block with all rounded corners. So I've got here, I think it's 1.5 millimeters. Yeah, 1.5 millimeter square strip, And what I've done is gone around with a sanding stick and just sort of taken all the corners off just to soften it up and sort of make it into a cube, if you like, with rounded corners. And I'm just going to cut a piece off the end, so it's sort of roughly 1.5 millimeters long, so it's like a cube. And then what I need to do, in fact what I should do really is forget that, I should do this again. And then just go round and soften up these corners. And what I need to do is make a slit down the middle. I'm going to use a saw. Let's find a saw. Here we go. This blade's seen better days. I'm just going to make a slit down the middle. There we go. Just about a millimetre deep, I guess. And then I'm going to try and open that up a little bit with the blade. Okay, and there we go. I've basically glued that on there now and sanded the ends. Grab my tweezers so you don't have to look at my horrible fingernails. And you can see that I've basically sanded the end, made it all round, and just basically taken the corners off. And if you look at any of your references, you'll see what this is. It's basically like a white block. Never seen anything like it before. So that's ready now to glue in. So that's just going to go into that slot in there, and it will go in. And I'm assuming now, I could just check my references again. This is the number 9 Hellcat walk around. Somebody's asked me if I could move my light so you don't get glare off the pages. No. So basically there it is there, and it's down, and then we've got some, there's the same thing there. And then when we go over to the F3, that one there, you can see it's got the same thing down here, and you can see in that position it's down. So what I'm going to do, I am going to fit it and have it down. You see there again, that one's got a black knob on it, and that one is also down. So I'll have it in the down position, I think. So I'm basically just going to dip the end into some super glue and just push it into that slot like so, and there we go. And then if we want to add a little bit of strength just to make sure it's not going to fall off, we can put a drop of glue on that side there, because when we're sanding our fuselage seams and stuff, we don't want all this to go falling off, do we? There we go. And I've also put that little T-handle on there, which is I think part number 11. There's a little tiny T-handle there you can see. Now I'm going to have to paint this again, which is really annoying, although I might just grab the brush and just touch up, because what I don't want to have to do is have to do this masking again and everything else like that. So this lever is going to have to be painted. I'll have to check out what colour it's going to be. It's probably got to be black. But we can see now we've got the white block on there now, and I'm just going to put a drop of super glue in there to fill the top in. And there we go. That's the knob on the end painted white, and I've painted the handle in a gloss black. That's some Tamiya X1. I put some PVA glue on that little T-handle there and painted that with the gloss black as well. And I've also done this square area just to the left of the lever with gloss black, ready for the decal that goes on there. And then once the decal's on, I'll go around with some matte varnish, probably do this whole area in a thin matte varnish just to blend it all in. Okay, let's get this done. Right, so decal's on now. There are 3 holes in the instrument panel across here. This one is about 0.3, this one is about 0.65, and this one is about 0.95. So what I've decided to do is I've put a piece of 0.3 wire in there. You might be able to just make it out just in there. So that's like a small switch or a small adjuster for that actual gauge, probably some sort of calibration. Oh, by the way, this lever I've realised is the for the undercarriage, which is why it's always down on parked aircraft. Now here there is a, what looks like to be on some is like a pull knob, on others it looks like a rotary type thing. I've looked through my spares box, I can't find like a cogged wheel, so what I've done, I've made this, and this is basically a piece of 0.64 25 thou plastic rod, and it's got like a 1mm disc glued to the top of it, and then I've literally dipped it in some dark blue-grey paint just to give it a bit of contrast. So what I can do then is just push this into that hole, in through there, pull it in from the back, and there we go, that's that one in place. And then this push knob here I've made from a piece of 0.8 plastic rod, so again I can put that in the hole like so, put it through from behind, and there we go, and it's shaved a little bit of plastic off of there, and there we go. So that's those in place. So take a drop of extra thin now, and just remember this is on the back of here is the plastic instrument panel, so we can use the extra thin to hold them in place. So that's that done. I've just picked up my Photo-etch with me. It's got this double-sided tape on it. So here we go, and now what I can do is just come in with a pair of cutters and cut the excess off the backs, and then I can stick it back on my lump of blue tack like so. So I've got something to hold it with again, and there you are. You can see now they're there looking pretty nice, even if I do say so myself. So there you go. So other than this panel here, which glues to the right hand side console, that's it. That is the Airscale set in a bag. Now this video has basically been, as I mentioned earlier, a cut and paste, or a cut of basically what I've already done. So so I hope you've enjoyed it. It's basically a quick flick through the actual proper cockpit assembly of the Airfix 1/24 Hellcat, which is in parts 8A, B, C, D and E. So I'm not showing this because I'm at the point now where I'm ready to flat coat everything and start some weathering, and I don't want to get flat coat on that because I want it to remain semi-gloss like these dials here are. And obviously I haven't pulled off the protection over the gauges, the mask, because I may have to paint it again if I scratch it or something. So that's why that's been left. Okay, and there we go. I finally fitted this panel into the starboard cockpit wall. That's that. So just to finish off, we'll have a close look at everything, and you can see now the actual cockpit's had a flat coat. So you can see the addition of the decals and the switches and the Photo-etch panel on there, and that fuse board looks incredible. I think you'll agree. Looks really, really nice. Great improvement. And then we've got the port wall. We've got the addition of the decals, and then those scratch built throttle levers that I did, and that's all looking lovely. And of course you've got this Photo-etch panel on the top as well there, which adds to the detail. And then in the cockpit itself, again you can see it's now been flat coated. And although I didn't use this center panel from the actual Airscale set, I have used the decals on there, and I have used that central ammo counter there, which I've yet to put a pin in the center of and put a gloss coat on the glazing. And yeah, I think you'll agree. I think it does make a difference, and for the little amount of investment, I think it's well worth it. Oh, and finally, I forgot to show you the instrument panel, which is the main part of the set. You can see there, obviously the gauges are covered up with the mask. One thing I would say is when you fit this, make sure you don't get the Photo-etch hanging over the edge of the plastic panel here. You can see I've just had to trim it away slightly, because it does affect the fit of the instrument panel into the cockpit. So probably a good idea if you fit this panel, fit these upper sills onto the sidewalls first, then fit the panel on and test fit it all in before you actually start to detail anything. I've just had to sort of basically get this to fit with all this detail, and it's been quite tricky actually, to be honest. And and I don't know, maybe I'll try my other kit, but I don't think this actual instrument panel itself is a fantastic fit either, so without all the Airscale parts, I mean. And also remember, the fuselage on mine is quite flat, so I have to sort of pull it all in, so I don't really know how I'm going to manage to fit the instrument panel in at all, really, to be honest. But there we go, that was the purpose of the video. I've shown you the Airscale set, shown you how I fitted it. It's been a very, very quick, well, not quick, but quicker version of the actual cockpit setup on my US Navy Hellcat build, which has been basically parts 8A through to 8E. So thanks for watching. Go get yourself a set, it's well worth the money. Bye bye.